Hello and good morning on this very fine and lovely Wednesday morning. This is James Bond Radio with 30 Days of Spectre, and today we're looking at the climax of the film. With me is my good pal, Tom Sears. How you doing, Tom? Are you looking forward to this one?
I'm doing very well. Like we said before, the most of the kind of the split opinion comes with the last third of the film, the post-torture sequence. So and there's some understandable points to be had with that. So I think this is going to be an interesting discussion about how they've ended the film, potentially why they ended it the way they did, and possible kind of echoes into Bond 25 of what that might bring.
Definitely.
So yeah, exciting times.
Cool. Sounds good. So basically, where we left off last time, obviously Bond and Swan had just escaped the desert base, and they'd gone to the MI6 building. Basically Bond had tried to kill Blofeld, and then he obviously rescued Madeline, and that's where we last left them. So basically, MI6, the explosions went off, it went to crumble, and Bond and Madeline escaped in the speedboat. But Blofeld at that point, I thought they were already dead, didn't he? So
yeah,
he got a bit of a shock after that, didn't he?
He certainly did, absolutely. So I guess the opening part to talk about then is obviously they come burning out of the bottom of the MI6 building on the little boat. We got Blofeld trying to get away in his chopper. He thinks it's all kind of been done and dusted and solved, and he's off to start hatching his next scheme. And then Bond obviously gets his gun out and starts shooting at the helicopter. Now, how do you feel about this? Because for example, for me, I feel like this is a little bit of a in terms of the believability of bringing down a helicopter with a handgun, especially a PPK.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was disappointed first of all when Bond and Madeline drove past in a speedboat, and Moneypenny didn't whoop and go, "Yeah, go James, go James, go James, go James." But obviously that didn't happen. So I know taking down a helicopter with a gun is a bit interesting. I mean, to be honest, I've never actually had a problem with it, because if he'd shot it first time and then it went into flames, I would have been like, okay, that's equivalent of him escaping the Blofeld lair and just shooting everyone. But the fact that it sort of, it took a while, a few bullets ricocheted off the shell of the helicopter. And the fact is, if you shot a gun into the engine, it would catch on fire. So
yeah, I suppose
I've got no problem with it.
It's one of those things where I think it's like that classic thing about how Bond always goes far beyond the probable but never beyond the possible. And yeah, you're right. I mean, if you did shoot a gun into the engine of a helicopter, I'm sure it would cause it some problems. But I think, I don't know, where it's a little bit of a stretch for me is that, the PPK is known to not be the most powerful gun in the world, especially at that sort of range. It was a bit like but I can live with it. I can, it does its job. Something had to happen. I would rather that than Bond bring out a bazooka from nowhere and just shoot it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What if there wasn't a bazooka and the PPK, maybe he tried the PPK, but it wasn't effective? How else do you think he could have done it, or how else? What would have worked?
Do you know what? I don't have an answer to that, because I've actually given that some thought, and I can't think of anything else. You have that standoff. Blofeld's flying away. Well, my answer would be let Blofeld escape. But but yeah, if you had to bring down a chopper, then I guess that's the only, with the tools at hand, that Bond would have at that time. Unless Q had given him something earlier on, but that could be a bit shoehorned in. I feel like, I mean, it's just, he did what he did with the tools at hand, I suppose.
What about if he had fired and the helicopter would have had some potential damage, but not enough to bring it down on the bridge? And what about, I suppose, would this have been too much if the helicopter came down, but perhaps not on the bridge, but maybe sort of within, the city buildings, within a city, maybe even down the Whitehall, because Whitehall's just there. Maybe if the helicopter came down the middle of Whitehall and like Bond and the police and them and everyone rushes to it, and at that point they find the helicopter pilot dead, but there's no trace of Blofeld. Would you have liked that?
Yeah, I think I'm all for Blofeld escaping. I have a sort of theory about why he's been taken into captivity at the end. But I would have been like, because at the end of the day, Blofeld always gets away. He always gets away, and I feel what I suppose what my complaint about this section is when Bond shoots the engine and the beep 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 starts going on, and the helicopter's obviously in trouble. We see Blofeld scrambling for his seatbelt and holding on kind of thing, and I feel like that was the wrong move, because Blofeld is this super duper mastermind who is been doing the puppet strings all along. I don't think we should have seen him struggle this early. I'm no problem with the watch going off and all that kind of stuff, but I think he should be almost like a Hugo Drax, just totally calm and at ease no matter what's going on. And obviously when Bond finally brings him down in a future film, we can see him have a little panic. But I think at this stage, this early in the game, we shouldn't ever see any weakness from Blofeld. And
it would have been a nice contrast if the helicopter's spinning, you could see the pilot was completely crapping himself, trying to control it and fearful himself, and Blofeld's just sitting in the back deadpan. That would have been quite a cool thing. I think.
Yeah. Or even like a little smirk of respect for Bond for having brought it down. Do you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
But him looking nervous and seatbelting up, I feel, was just a bit of an odd choice.
I wasn't. That didn't really sit well with me either, actually.
Yeah. So there we go then. So it brings the helicopter down onto the bridge. We get a bit of brace. Which what Bond film have you heard that in before?
I'd say the one with Gerard Butler.
There you go. I wish I could remember what his quote is now, because I'd rack out the accent again. But there we go. So obviously, helicopter comes down on Westminster Bridge. Blofeld gets out, crawls away. And what I noticed about this last time, I was like, oh shit, I didn't think about that. When you see obviously Bond kind of pull up to the riverbank and jump out and run up the stairs, at that bit he's running straight past Lazenby lampposts, isn't he?
Oh, that's a good shout, actually. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Do we actually see Lazenby lampposts?
Well, I because it's obviously really dark. I think you probably do, but it's it's just a quick blink and you'll miss it shot.
Yeah.
But,
do you think he hopped on and did a quick pose and then carried on?
I would like to think so. I'd like to see a picture of Daniel doing that. But But yeah, so there's a little thing of the past there that he just runs straight past, which I thought was quite interesting. So obviously he's up on the bridge. Blofeld kind of managed to get out of the helicopter and he's kind of crawling away. His legs obviously a bit buggered. And so his little bit of sort of speculation is that I've seen a few people online talking about this ending and the thought that, okay, Blofeld's obviously lost his eye now. He's got the scar, so he's going to have that traditional appearance in the next movie. Some people take the whole "Be Your Eyes Only" opening sequence with the Blofeld drop down the chimney as like a Blofeld thing, in the sense that perhaps at some point he should be in the wheelchair. Do you think next time we might see him with the scar in a wheelchair? Do you think his leg's that badly buggered?
I think it's a bit early days. I'd prefer, if he did, I'd want to see him recover again. I wouldn't want to just see him in a wheelchair for the rest of his days, because that would be a bit too Professor X for me.
Yeah.
If he did end up in the next one because of the accident and the crawling, because the crawling away, he does use his legs, like his knees, doesn't he? So it's not like he just uses his hands. But I suppose if he was to be in a wheelchair in the facility or whatever, it would be all right. I think for me personally, it's a bit too early.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things about this scene that struck me. You know how the helicopter basically gouges a massive a line out of Westminster Bridge?
Yeah.
And to me, that's exactly the same as the scar on Blofeld's face. It's the same sort of type thing. I think they are meant to mirror each other, or at least that's kind of what I got out of it. And the way that he crawls away is very much like Tim Dalton in License to Kill, when he's crawling away from the oil tanker. It's the same sort of thing. But yeah, in terms of the whole wheelchair thing, I definitely wouldn't be against it. But personally, I think it'd probably be either a bit too early, or if it is there, I'd like to see it I hope he's not like that for the rest of the time that we've got this Blofeld. Otherwise,
yeah, because it's an interesting one. Because obviously at the time they couldn't say that was officially Blofeld. Obviously that has come out since they've got now regained the rights, but at the time that was just question mark in the credits. But some people have taken that to be like the ultimate arc of Blofeld's character. That is what happens to him. He ends up in a wheelchair, which still with a neck brace on after all those years.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I don't take that as like canon gospel of what happens to Blofeld. I feel like the scar, even the scar I don't think is really canon, because only Donald had it, and Telly didn't even have it, and neither did Charles Gray. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I feel like we probably won't get that next time, because that's going to restrict him. There's more they could do with the character if he's mobile. But it's an interesting interesting thought nonetheless. So we have this little kind of little bit on the bridge. You got M running up, the police cordon kind of stops him, and all that kind of business. Swan appears on the other end of the bridge, and then sort of Bond walks up to Blofeld. He kind of looks up at him, tells him to finish it, and then there's that sort of moment where Bond's kind of like deciding what he's going to do. And at that moment, I was curled into a ball, going, "Please don't shoot him! Please don't shoot him! Please don't shoot him!" And then obviously he's out of bullets, and then chucks the gun in the river, and he wanders off over to see Madeline, and M is the one that comes in and sort of does the arrest. So what do you think about that?
Sorry, my mind was still playing about the wheelchair thing, and I've just sort of a way that I think would be really cool that if they did do it, if they opened up, say we go for the pre-titles that we've sort of mentioned and quite a few people have mentioned, where he's in the facility, and when we see him, he's in a wheelchair, okay? And like whoever, maybe we follow the black clothed figure if it is to break him out, but we see Blofeld in a wheelchair and we think, oh my God, this is him now. But he's been fooling MI6 that he's so fucked that he can't use his legs, so he's in his wheelchair. But as soon as someone comes to rescue him and there's a way out, he just gets up and walks out. And there's a security guard who's been on him who's now sort of at the hands of Hinks about to die, and he just looks at Blofeld stand up and get away as if, what? That's not right. Yeah. And then Blofeld just walks off. That would be quite cool.
You know what? That reminds me of, that is a good idea. That reminds me of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Have you seen that film?
Probably not for a while, no.
It's classic. There's a scene where Steve Martin pretends to be in a wheelchair and he can't feel his legs. But that's a digression, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. They could that could be a nice little angle they play. Yeah. So obviously he wanders off to see Madeline, and then they kind of walk off into the moon set, so to speak, because it's not sunny out. And now I've seen some comments about that this ending. Okay, there's actually several angles to look at from where I'm standing with this. Is okay, does that illustrate the throwing of the gun in the river, that Bond's quitting the service and going to go and settle down with Madeline and lead a normal life? That's question number one. What do you think? Yeah.
Initially, I remember I told you afterwards, my God, is that Danny Boy's last Bond? Because that's obviously what they're trying to make some people think, or at least to a certain extent. And it did cross my mind. I thought, like, is this Daniel saying goodbye and that's his thing wrapped up? And then straight away, I know that I'd been duped. Because there's no way Daniel's not going to come back.
Yeah.
And it's interesting if the main reason they did that was to try and dupe people. If they didn't have that idea in mind, how else would they have finished it?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, every single Bond film, pretty much, apart from the obvious ones, end with Bond essentially, in some way, shape or form, going off into the sunset with his Bond girl, whether it's, Pussy Galore under the parachute, Honey Rider in the boat, or,
This is the first time it's happened for Daniel as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's, he just wanders off by himself at the end of Quantum. Vesper dies in Casino, M dies in Skyfall. So that's his first opportunity. I might have preferred it if he'd been in an orange inflatable round thingy on the Thames. But, but that's all right. That's fine. So for me, like, obviously listening to the Sam Mendes interview, he said that's what he wanted to get across, that Bond's now quit the service and that's, him buggering off kind of thing. Yeah. But leaving it open to interpretation a little bit, So, that's not set in stone. And I feel like that's precisely what they've done. When I saw that, I was like, there's not enough there to say that's definitely what's happening. He's quitting the service, I guess just a little hint of it. So that's kind of like the first bit then with that ending. Do you think Blofeld should have been captured at the end? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, personally, I mean, if I had the choice, I think like you, Blofeld does get away, but they must have something in mind. Like if it was this facility thing, I like the idea of the wheelchair now, him pretending to have dodgy legs and then just walking out. But I think that would work equally as well. The thing is, I don't want Blofeld to be caught or killed at the end of Bond 25. I want him to, if they capture him in this one, I want him to still be around at the end of Bond 25. They think they've got him, he's escaped. They think they captured him again or something, and like he gets away or something like that. Otherwise, I think that is a bit of a missed opportunity. So I don't know. I mean, if he did get away, it would have been pretty cool.
The thing is, I feel like they've made that decision for a reason, right? I feel like if he didn't get away, Bond wouldn't have had that sense of closure at the end of the story. He wouldn't have thrown his gun in the river and be like, right, let's go and sod off with Madeleine and settle down or whatever, because Blofeld's still out there, They wouldn't have been able to have that ending. And
that's true. That's very true.
So it would have been a cliffhanger ending as opposed to the ending we did get. And I feel like the only reason the ending would be that important, what they gave us, is because next time some shit's going to go down and then the stakes are going to get even higher. I think everybody knows what I'm hinting at there. Madeleine's going to get, a little bit troublesome, and there's going to be a bit of a Blofeld James Bond showdown kind of thing. I feel like that is the only logical reason why. Otherwise, you would just kill him. You would just kill him. True. And if he was just to get away, it's going to be more of a cliffhanger. So I feel like at the beginning of the next film, Bond has to naturally be in a place of happiness and comfort. And the rug's going to get pulled out from under him when Blofeld escapes. And then we've got our kind of, we've got our movie kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. Yeah, I can definitely see that happening for sure. That's a really good point. Like they wouldn't have him just walk off into the sun. They couldn't have had that ending if Blofeld had got away, because Bond would be thinking about that above anything else. So that is the only way that they could have had that ending. So that definitely must have been a part of it.
Yeah.
There are still certain things I'm not sure about. I've never been quite sure about the way he tosses his gun away. I'm like, even if you don't want it, just you've got rid of the magazine. There's no bullets in it. Just stick in your pocket or something.
Guns are expensive as well, man. With all the budget cuts and stuff like that going on, he should be a little bit more responsible with his weaponry. Yeah.
And what if someone is in a boat underneath and it lands in them and then they've got a gun? Or if,
exactly.
It's just that's the only bit that I wasn't too keen on for me. I think that was a little bit almost Skyfall territory in the way that it was done. For me personally, I would have preferred not to have seen that. I think the way that he did it with Blofeld, get rid of the magazine, similar to how we saw Swan do in the train earlier in the film. Get rid of the bullets, out of bullets, fine. But the gun and the walking off is
So I've seen some comments as well about how this ending felt like a generic cop movie. Some people have said that it's like I think somebody said like almost like Lethal Weapon or something like that.
Yeah.
Because those movies do tend to end with flashing lights of police with roadblocks and somebody being put in a blanket and being led away and somebody having a little chuckle at the end, like a Die Hard movie.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can definitely see that. I mean, it does have that vibe about it. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's not something, I don't see that as a particularly bad thing. I'm like, okay, well, this is the climax for that. I feel like the setting, being in the wreckage of the MI6 and then the actual final standoff at the very end is right there by the Houses of Parliament. I mean, that's a perfect location for something like that, like just to see that building is like classic London. So I don't feel like that ending is like a letdown because it has that style of ending. It doesn't bother me. What do you think?
Yeah. I was, when I first saw it, I was a bit sort of, I wasn't expecting it, put it that way, because like everyone else who's watched the last three Daniels, we just haven't had anything like that. And I know the style and tone of the film was different, but maybe I was thinking Blofeld's going to get away. Maybe I was thinking, it was going to end differently. So when it was the whole walking off hand in hand, that definitely kind of threw me a bit. I don't know whether it's because I wasn't happy with it or whether it's because it was just, I wasn't expecting it. I think it's okay. I think a lot of how I view the end of Spectre is going to be determined by the start of Bond 25, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's almost, I appreciate what they've done and it's not bad, but it's almost like how Quantum stepped up a level or two because of Spectre. I think the end of Spectre is either going to get better because of what happens in Bond 25, or it might even be like, I'm not sure. So hopefully it's the
I feel like, obviously we're going to do a full episode on Bond 25 speculation, but my gut feeling is we're going to get the Blofeld trilogy now, and that this is essentially the first part of that trilogy. And people saying, not enough screen time for Christoph and stuff. I feel like that'll just make sense with what's going to come next. It's Blofeld begins. We'll see the story fleshed out. Then we'll get some sort of Majesty's Diamonds Are Forever hybrid in Bond 25, and then 126 will be the original You Only Live Twice story from Fleming with the Garden of Death, and they've got to use that title Shatterhand in there, man. It's just got to be done. But yeah, so that's where obviously we'll talk about that at length with the Bond 25 speculation episode coming up. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. I feel like they've made those choices for a reason, and that must be a very good reason. And I feel like that will unfold with the next film. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely.
So the very last part, obviously, is where we see M in his lab again, and Bond shows up. Q in his lab, absolutely. Of course, that's who I meant. M doesn't have a lab, does he? And obviously, Bond's gone to pick up the DB5, and off he goes into the sunset with Madeline. Now, again, I've seen a lot of complaints of, oh, not the DB5 again, and that it's overused and all that kind of business. What are your thoughts on that?
It wouldn't have been like, if it wasn't in this film, I wouldn't have minded at all. The fact that it is there, I like, when it was in Q's workshop and you could just see like the hull of it almost, the outer bonnet type thing. I thought, oh, okay, it's interesting. And then you can't, that's setting up the end scene, isn't it? I wouldn't want to see it again. I suppose if they do a Bond Madeline thing at the start of Bond 25, then you might see it in the background, a bit like Tomorrow Never Dies when you just sort of see it a little bit. So you might get something like that. But ultimately, I'd prefer not to sort of see it now for a little while. Like I said before, get a White Lotus in there or something.
Very nice. Yeah, so I suppose we've had it in 3 out of 4 Danny Boy movies, haven't we, so far?
Yeah.
We don't see it in Quantum, do we? If I haven't forgotten that.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, and it was the kind of like, it's almost like this, obviously the reveal of it in Skyfall was, opening up this garage door and there it is. And it was like a ooh moment. And I suppose at the end of the day, the climax of this film is that same thing repeated, I guess. It's like, oh, there's his DB5 and off he trots. Yeah. So yeah, I can understand why people might say that. To me, I feel like that's a fitting way to finish the film. Like, it's like, there it is, Bond, that is Bond's car at the end of the day.
What if it appeared again in Bond 25? Would you think that's one too much or not?
Possibly. I suppose it depends how it's done. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you have a character who has a car, then, and that car is very important to him, then you're going to probably see that vehicle, aren't you? I think if they do it, if they sort of do it again as like this little smiley wink and a nod, oh, here comes the DB5, then, we don't need that again. But, like in Tomorrow Never Dies, when he's just bombing bombing along in it, and it's not really made as anything. It's just like there he is off and
with his car.
Yeah. So
what about the scene with Q? What do you think of that then? That last one, because a lot of people have sort of said that Q saying, "Oh, I thought you'd gone," sort of thing.
Yeah.
That could be seen a couple of different ways. I thought you'd left the service, or I thought you'd gone on leave.
Yeah.
There's various ways you can look at that, isn't there?
Yeah, I feel like that's another one where you could that's open enough that it could hint that when he says, did he say I thought you'd gone or I thought you'd left? What did he say?
I thought you'd.
One of the two. I can't remember.
I thought you'd left. I thought you'd gone. I thought you'd left. Maybe I can't remember.
Could be either. I can't remember off the top of my head now.
Yeah.
But that is an open-ended. That could mean that he's left the service, or it means he's just off on holiday for a bit and he's already gone. So that's obviously like a very conscious thing they've done. Is otherwise they would have had the scene where Bond walks in and walks over to M and hands him his Walther instead of chucking it in the river and being like, right, that's it, I'm done, I'm off.
Yeah.
But we didn't get that. So we'll see. I feel like it's one of those open-ended things. You decide for yourself what you want that to mean, I guess.
Sure.
But there we go.
Cool.
So that is the end of Spectre, isn't it, Chris? We've covered pretty much everything so far.
We have. So overall thoughts then, Tom, what do you think? Spectre as in terms of in relation to the other Bonds and sort of overall thoughts of the film itself?
I think it's a banger. I don't know whether I've made that clear so far in the previous episodes, but I absolutely adore this film. I think it's brilliant. Now, with that said, of course, it's like most of the Bonds where it's not without its weaknesses. There are things that we've discussed where we've gone, well, that bit could have been better. They could have done that a bit different, blah, blah, blah. Which is only natural. And there are very few Bond films where you can't really say that about them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, if you said, what would you improve about Casino? I'd be like, I don't really know off the top of my head. There's nothing that sort of stands out. And there are some obvious scenes in this one that, as we said, we would change and we would do a little bit different. But in no way does that harm my appreciation for the film. I feel like it's none of it stands out as like an moment. They fucked that right up. Absolutely not at all. Like, that, and I mean, when you read the leaked scripts as well, it's like pretty much up until they get to Blofeld's base is more or less identical in the different drafts. It's only that last part that changes at any amount. So that's obviously been the troublesome part for them. They've obviously known that, and that's why there's been so many rewrites. But yeah, it doesn't harm my appreciation for the film. I don't even really look at that as like a big disappointment. I'm like, that's what happens. Yeah, okay. It's not like Bond suddenly puts on a big pair of mechanical wings and starts flying around London. If that's not like an fuck moment for me. It was just like that's what happens, and I'm down with it. I'm cool with it, and I'm just really intrigued as to what we're going to get in the next film. Whether tonally, they're going to make it a lot darker if the subject matter is along the lines of what we're thinking, whether it's going to be more or less the same with the lightheartedness or what. Yeah, I'm intrigued. What about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, when I first watched it, I thought it was absolutely amazing and epic, brilliant. I watched it a second time and I said to you, I think this could be better than Casino Royale.
Yeah.
I don't think that is the case now. Because Casino Royale is just got so little wrong with it. It's brilliant. But I think Spectre, for me, I love it as well. I think it's amazing. Just the fact that literally everything that we wanted, we got. Like in terms of all the scenes, the characters, the little nods, the amount of the style that I think Spectre is one of the most stylish Bonds in the whole series in terms of the way that they handled certain things, particularly like all the classy little nods and stuff like that. I think it's amazing. I think up until, like we said before, up until the sort of beyond the part just after the torture scene, I think is first-rate Bond. You think about that train fight, you think about like Madeline, you think about the pre-titles, you think about all the MQ, Moneypenny bits, all of that, all the MI6 stuff fucking rocks. It's amazing. You got the crater, all that, and the desert base. I love the car chase, Lucia Sciarra's death was brilliant, and it's fab. I love the MI6 stuff. At the end in the MI6 building, there are a couple of little tweaks maybe, but I still think that's pretty decent.
Yeah.
So overall, I'd definitely give it a double thumbs up. I'd say, like, for me, it's top 10 at the moment. I don't know where yet, but I'm a big fan.
I guess there's the whole thing as well. When a new film comes out, you got to let the newness wear off a little bit. and really let it settle. So I think it needs a good 6 months, maybe even a year before you start ranking it amongst the others. But yeah, for me, it's right up there at the top. Like, it's at least top 10. I mean, I adore this movie, man. I really do. I think it's great. And I think when I compare it to Skyfall, as we said before, my rundown goes Casino, Spectre, Quantum, Skyfall in terms of appreciation. When I compare it to Skyfall, for me, this is a massive step up from Skyfall. It really is. Like, and I know half the world are going, what? For me saying that. To be honest, I think Skyfall to this day is overrated. I don't think it did, obviously it was massively successful and it sort of caught a wave of the public's sort of, appreciation for it at the time and stuff. And, that's cool. And I'm always happy to see Bond being appreciated. But for me, that film, there was too much in it that just made me go, that's not right. Bond getting in his DB5 and using the machine guns outside Skyfall. It was like, that just feels like, that's like a high schooler wrote that scene. Do you know what I mean? Who's going to write a script for his favorite Bond and that's what he's going to serve up, And a lot of the humor fell flat. And to be honest with you, after Skyfall, I was thinking along the lines of, I'm sort of ready to see a different Bond actor now. That's what I was kind of thinking after Skyfall. After this one, I'm like total 180 on that. I feel like all the humor was totally on point. Most importantly, Daniel's performance of that humor was perfect. He had the flippancy down from, the very beginning where it's like saying to see, oh, that all sounds lovely, all the way through to the, to the end. I think this is my favorite performance of Daniel's by far. I think he's now in the flow of what James Bond is and what his kind of take on the character is. And I'm all for a lighter Bond, man. I feel like you've had 3 really dark movies with Bond standing there next to him in Skyfall, looking into the middle distance. How old were you when your parents died, James? You know the answer to that. And he's just looking there miserable, gritting his teeth. I've had enough. I've had 3 movies of that in a row. Let's see Bond being a cool bastard again. Let's see him at the height of his powers, not a rookie, not a past it bloke that's just hanging on by his fingernails. Let's have Bond in his absolute prime, being the coolest bastard on the planet. And we get a massive bucket full of that in this film. And I'm really happy with it. There you go. There's my review.
I love it. It's great. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I think it was a brave move to do the shift in terms of like the lighter heartedness, but for me, it's a definite success. If Daniel had done like one film, like if Spectre had been along the same sort of lines and maybe he did one more and all of his had been dark and gritty, it just would have been, I don't know, it just wouldn't have been as good, would it? Like, look at Roger and Sean, and they've both got sort of different elements to them. In terms of how dark they get. And I think this will help the series a lot, actually, just sort of shifting. And Daniels as well, and sort of the future.
At the end of the day, that's my diagnosis of the bad reviews, is that all the critics were just wanting Skyfall 2. And do you know what? If they'd have served up Skyfall 2, they'd have fucking complained about that as well, because it'd have been like, oh, it's just the same again. That's my take on it. And at the end of the day, going back to Connery, going back to Roger Moore, there's tonal shifts in all of those, isn't there? Like, you've got sort of Doctor No from Russia with Love, really grounded. Goldfinger's a lot more bombastic and big. Thunderball gets that bit more sort of fantastical with the huge underwater battle and the nuclear bombs and, this huge global scale. Obviously, Only Live Twice goes up and even a step even further than that. And it's like, if you just served up Casino Royale even 5 or 6 times, it would be like... it's just, we don't need to do that because we've already had it. Let's try some other stuff,
Exactly.
And the thought that Spectre is a step in the wrong direction purely because it's classic Bond, to me, is people just missing the point entirely, man. It's like, that is what we love about this character, It's like, brilliant, bring it on. Let's have some more of that, please.
I tell you what, this film has got me so much more excited for the following Bond film than Skyfall did, than Quantum did. Casino obviously did the same thing. That got me like really excited about the next one, and it didn't quite come off. But this has got me, because there's so many ways it can go, and because obviously we're both really happy with what we've got with Spectre. I think I'm really, really excited to see how Bond 25 goes now. And it's nice to have that feeling, because you don't want to kind of think, oh, I'm not sure how they're going to do the next one. You want to feel, okay, yes, great. All right, let's get it on then. Let's
absolutely. Yeah, man, it's an exciting time to be a Bond fan. I've been saying that for like 2 years now with all the trickles of news, but now immediately after it, it is also an exciting time because it's like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. I'm totally up for Bond 25. Can't wait for it to get here. Do you think we're going to have a 2-year or a 3-year gap?
Well, I think for purposes of Daniel, I think it'll be better if we could stick it to 2. Not that he'll be gone if we left it to 3 in terms of his ability, but if he did 2 films, which I'm hoping he does, I'd prefer it to have 2-year gaps rather than 2 3-year gaps or whatever would be a step too far, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think so. Or there's also the possibility of the whole Lord of the Rings style back-to-back shooting. Because there was that news, wasn't there, about this one being a double hitter of Bond 24 and 25 being written at the same time as a 2-part story. Yeah. That was leaked out and then denied. But, there's been a lot, typically speaking, whenever something leaks out about Bond and then they deny it, it usually comes out as being true later, doesn't it?
So I wonder if there are some scripts out there for Bond 25 or at least provisional scripts for Bond 25 outlines already. Yeah, outlines at least. That's really interesting. Or they might have pulled the wool over everyone's eyes and filmed it already, but just not told us.
Yeah, very sneaky. I like that. Yeah, good stuff.
I doubt it, but yeah, that's a good point.
Cool stuff. So that about rounds out today's episode. That's becoming a new catchphrase of mine, isn't it? That about rounds out today's episode. So make sure you come and join us on the social medias. Come to facebook.com and type in James Bond Radio into the search box and you'll find us. Same on Twitter. You'll find us at James Bond Radio. And if you could come over to jamesbondradio.com and you can get involved in the conversation in the comments section over there, you can leave us voicemails and all that kind of shenanigans. And also, if you wouldn't mind subscribing to our YouTube channel, because we upload all sorts of stuff up there all the time, which is good. And last but not least, if you'll come to our iTunes page, again, just go to the iTunes store, type in James Bond Radio and you'll find us, and leave us a lovely glowing 5-star review, because that really helps us rank higher and attract more listeners, doesn't it, Chris?
It does indeed.
Now, we also have a bit of a new development on jamesbondradio.com as well, which is a lovely big shiny donate button. So by no means is it expected or encouraged even, but if you have a few spare quid lying around and you want to help the JBR cause, then by all means send us a few quid, because I know you haven't got any shoes anymore, have you, Chris? You're walking around in flip-flops all day.
No, I've got a pair, but they've just got holes in it and it's quite wet at the moment, so I just get sodden feet.
Yeah, we can't have that. We can't have Chris walking around in bare feet with wet feet all the time. But yeah, by no means is anybody obligated, but we've kindly had a couple of people say they wouldn't mind, just helping out and all that kind of stuff, because JBR obviously does take quite a lot of time and energy to produce, and a few extra quid in the bank does help sometimes. So there's that. You can see that in the menu bar over on jamesbondradio.com. Lovely stuff. So we will be back tomorrow with 30 Days of Spectre, another installment. So until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And we'll be back in the morning. We'll see you then.
See you tomorrow, everyone. Bye.